a lot of people right now are talking about shame, which is wonderful. And something that is really important when we're having these conversations is to make a distinction. We've got what's called self-conscious emotions, and they're great. So we don't want to vilify shame because it's really important for making sure that we don't kill other people, from there on the spectrum all the way through to like picking our nose in public. If you imagine picking your nose in public, you might feel a sense of shame. That's shame doing its job. So, or like when we have like a really mean thought about someone, shame, we immediately feel the shame, and that keeps us from doing the next thing. People who don't feel shame, what we get with that is something like sociopathy. So shame is actually really important, as are all of the self-conscious emotions, humiliation, embarrassment, guilt. They're really adaptive because we live in groups socially. The reason shame is really important to distinguish is because it can tip over into toxic shame, and that is when it becomes maladaptive. That's when it becomes really dangerous. And it's this sense of self, a relationship to the self that's not I did something bad. Guilt is I did something bad. And that's great. If we do something bad, which we all will because we're all human, to be like, oh, I did something bad is a wonderful thing because maybe you won't do it again, or you can fix it, you can apologize. Great. Shame is I am bad. And that is a slippery slope. We learn shame because in the sort of normative situation, you've got a young kid learning to toddle off away from a primary caregiver. And shame is a really efficient and quick way to keep that infant or toddler or child safe, because say they're about to put their fingers in an electrical socket and they turn back to their parent who just a moment ago they were in this moment of shared joy, shared union with, the gaze. All of a sudden the parent's gaze changes and the child is abruptly taken out of that joy, that ecstasy, and brought right down to, oh no, I'm not engaged, I'm not held in that person's joyful heart at the moment. And it stops us. And it stops us importantly. And when we kind of elaborate that throughout life, in a normal, what Donald Winnicott calls the good enough situation, so not perfect, and of course not abusive, not maltreatment. Feeling shame is normal. We all feel shame. We feel it every day. It's okay. But if we live in shame, that can be really destructive, really dangerous. We see chronic shame in personality disorders, suicide, addiction, across all manner of really the toughest mental health difficulties. There's a lot of shame there. What can we do when we feel shame? There's a whole practice of becoming what Brené Brown calls more shame resilient. There's a researcher that she has worked with named Kristen Neff, who talks about self-compassion as an antidote to shame. Sometimes it's easier for some than others. So maybe just the idea of self-compassion is enough. Just hearing that when we feel ashamed, being kind to ourselves and giving a kind word to ourselves, if that's something innate to us, that can be enough. For those of us who had experiences growing up that weren't so positive, or just maybe we're biologically predisposed toward finding this hard, maybe a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, talking about shame with a professional, a clinician, or even just someone we love and we really, really, really trust. The antidote to shame, as Brené Brown says, is me too, right? That validation. She has a book titled, I Thought It Was Just Me, But It's Not, or something like that. And the reason is that that is just immediately such a powerful way to wash the shame away. I can say for myself as a recovering addict, if I share something and a fellow addict says, me too, so I don't have shame around the bulimia, I don't have shame around the addiction. And in fact, a lot of us recovered addicts feel, is it pride or just quite comfortable talking about it because the shame has been removed. It's definitely a multi-dimensional issue, but there's some pretty simple things we can do, whether it's on sort of the policy or societal level of improving treatment, improving funding, or the small level of just being kinder to ourselves, surrounding ourselves with people who are supportive, and having the courage and enough self-love to notice the people in our lives who make us feel ashamed or who maybe aren't helpful at helping us not feel ashamed, and maybe taking some space from those people as well.